Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission is always the same. Take a complex topic, armed with a stack of thorough source material, and extract the concentrated insights you need to be well-informed fast.
And today, we're venturing into a state that is, well, it's arguably one of the most misunderstood in the Union, South Dakota.
Yeah, I think for most people, their knowledge starts and ends with its nickname, the Mount Rushmore State.
Right. That and maybe its official motto, which is, brilliantly ambitious.
Under God, the people rule. But as we were digging into the history, the geography, the economy, one fact just became inescapable. This is a state that is fundamentally at war with itself.
Exactly. Our sources define the state by this profound central fault line. South Dakota isn't really one single entity.
No.
It's geographically, socially, politically, and economically split right in half by the Missouri River.
We're really talking about two distinct worlds that barely seem to recognize each other. They call them East River and West River.
And the difference between them is just massive. It covers everything from the climate in which you can grow to the culture and, of course, the political leanings.
So we have assembled a really comprehensive collection of resources. We're looking at South Dakota's history, its hidden wealth, its persistent poverty, and its pretty surprising modern role in global finance.
It's a fascinating story.
So our promise to you, the learner, is to unpack this powerful duality. We're going to move past the famous faces carved in granite and reveal the crucial, contrasting facts that define the real South Dakota.
So let's start right at the beginning, how this deeply divided territory was first settled and ultimately claimed.
Human history here goes way back, and it's marked by constant change and, frankly, a lot of conflict.
It is. If we look at the timeline from the sources, the earliest evidence we have points to Paleo-Indian hunter-gatherers.
Okay.
But they actually, they disappear from the archaeological record around 5000 BC.
So there was this huge, long period where human presence was either sparse or just migratory. What happens next?
Well, we have to jump forward quite a bit to between 500 and 800 AD.
Right.
That's when we see the arrival of the semi-nomadic mound builders. They were operating mostly in central and eastern South Dakota.
So this region, right around the big river systems, has always been an area of transition.
And often immense conflict. That history is immediately underscored by this one really chilling historical event that happened right near that critical dividing line, the Missouri River.
You're talking about the Crow Creek Massacre?
Yeah, in the 14th century. It's a tragic detail. At a fortified village near the Missouri, archaeological evidence suggests several hundred people, men, women, and children, were violently killed.
It's a stark reminder that long before Europeans even arrived, the Missouri River Valley was this incredibly strategic and contested area.
Absolutely. Vital for trade, for agriculture. So by the 1500s, another major group had settled the valley, the Arikara, who are also known as the Ree.
And they established these large, sort of semi-permanent villages right along the water, and they dominated the trade networks.
Their dominance, however, it started to wane by the early 19th century. That's when the Sioux tribes, the Lakota, Dakota, and Dakota, they became ascendant.
And the Sioux were primarily nomadic buffalo hunters, right? Following the great herds across the plains.
That's right, and they eventually lent their name to the state we're talking about today.
So while the Sioux were establishing their power base, the European claims arrived surprisingly early. Who exactly planted the first flag?
That credit goes to the French. In 1743, the La Vérendrye brothers explored the region and formally claimed it for France.
As part of the Louisiana Territory.
Exactly. And they did this wonderful symbolic thing. They buried a lead plate near the site of what is now modern-day Pierre, the state capital, to physically mark that claim.
Burying a plate near the future capital? That's a pretty potent historical image, but French control was, it was notoriously fickle in the middle of the continent, right?
It was fleeting. The region was transferred to Spain in 1762, becoming part of Spanish Louisiana, only to be handed back to France in 1802.
So this constant shifting of colonial claims really shows just how lightly populated and remotely governed the area was.
Yeah, it was just a political pawn in European struggles.
Yeah.
Until the next great power arrived on the scene.
And that power, of course, was the United States, which arrived in a big way with the 1803 Louisiana Purchase.
Which encompassed most of what would become South Dakota. And almost immediately, President Thomas Jefferson commissioned the Lewis and Clark expedition to go out and map this enormous new territory.
And their detailed accounts, they laid the practical groundwork for American expansion westward.
So when does American settlement really begin?
Continuous American settlement is generally dated from 1817, with the establishment of a really critical fur trading post at present-day Fort Pierre.
Strategically located right on the Missouri River.
Mhm.
But the acquisition of land from the indigenous inhabitants, that was the real accelerant.
And the critical turning point in that was the 1858 treaty.
Correct. In that treaty, the Yankton Sioux ceded a massive amount of territory, most of what is now eastern South Dakota, to the United States.
And that strategic move opened up the fertile East River region to development.
And land speculators did not waste any time. The sources tell us Sioux Falls was founded in 1856 and Yankton in 1859.
So these settlements really demonstrated the intent to develop the Eastern Plains aggressively.
This momentum led directly to the establishment of the Dakota Territory in 1861, which was initially huge. It had parts of modern-day Montana and Wyoming in it.
But what truly supercharged the population was, well, it was infrastructure and federal incentive.
You're talking about the Dakota boom.
Exactly. What were the key ingredients that made that boom possible?
Well, the first was the federal government's policy of the Homestead Acts, offering free land to settlers who were willing to work it.
And the second was the arrival of the railway.
A vital Eastern Railway link reached Yankton in 1873. So now you had this influx of settlers, mostly German and Scandinavian, pouring into the East River region because they could farm the land and then ship their produce to Eastern markets.
It sounds like the East River identity agricultural, connected to the Midwest, was literally forged by that railway spike and the Homestead Act.
It was. But as that boom pushed west toward the mountains, the historical trajectory became, tragic.
This is the moment where we have to confront the central historical wound of the state.
Right. In 1874, a military expedition led by George A. Custer confirmed the presence of gold in the Black Hills.
And Custer's expedition wasn't just a simple exploration, was it? It was a direct and really a deliberate violation of an existing solemn treaty.
Absolutely. We have to emphasize the gravity of the 1868 Treaty of Laramie. That treaty explicitly guaranteed the entire western half of present-day South Dakota to the Lakota people.
So the Great Sioux Reservation, including the sacred Black Hills?
Everything. Custer's presence, which was authorized by the U.S. government, was a blatant violation of that agreement.
And what happened when Custer confirmed there was gold?
An immediate, uncontrolled land invasion. Thousands of miners and prospectors flooded into the sacred Black Hills, completely ignoring the treaty rights.
And when the Sioux, quite reasonably, declined to sell or grant mining rights to the U.S. government,
War broke out.
so the U.S. broke its own treaty, sparked a conflict to protect illegal settlers, and when the U.S. military ultimately prevailed, they just dissolved the Great Sioux Reservation.
That's the bitter truth. The reservation was broken up into 5 smaller, much less desirable reservations, forcing the Lakota onto marginal lands.
And the consequences of this action aren't just historical footnotes. They are very much alive today.
Absolutely, especially when you look at the 1980 Supreme Court ruling. Many people might not understand the significance of the Lakota's reaction to that ruling.
So in 1980, the Supreme Court ruled that the U.S. government had illegally seized the Black Hills, and Congress and the court ordered that compensation be paid.
Critically, the Lakota Nation still refuses to accept that money.
Why refuse what has now grown into a multi-billion-dollar payment?
Because accepting the money would legally extinguish their claim to the Black Hills. From the perspective of the Lakota, accepting compensation would be like legalizing the theft of their sacred ancestral land.
So they insist on the return of the land itself, not a cash payout.
Exactly. It's one of the longest-running, deepest cultural and political conflicts in modern American history. It just demonstrates that the wounds of 1874 are still wide open.
That level of principled resistance really speaks volumes about the value that land holds. And this chapter of intense conflict tragically concludes in the 19th century with the Wounded Knee Massacre.
Yeah. On December 29, 1890, on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, the conflict reached its horrific climax,
The U.S. Army killed at least 146 Sioux.
including many women and children, alongside 31 U.S. soldiers. This event is cited as the last major armed conflict between the U.S. and the Lakota Sioux Nation.
And it left an indelible mark on the state's relationship with its indigenous population.
So moving from the battlefield to the political arena, by the late 1880s, the huge Dakota Territory was pushing for statehood, but internal friction demanded it be divided.
And the political dissatisfaction was primarily geographic.
Right. The southern half was more populated and had different agricultural interests than the north, but there was also a powerful political motivation at play back in Washington.
What was the political incentive for splitting one territory into two?
while creating 4 new Republican senators instead of just 2 from one large territory.
Ah,
Since the Dakota Territory was reliably Republican at the time, this was a clear advantage for the party controlling Congress.
so they rushed the creation of two states, even while ignoring the awkward fact that the issue of tribal land rights in the West River area was far from resolved.
Precisely. After territory residents voted for the division, Congress authorized the creation of the 2 Dakotas, plus Montana and Washington.
And the moment of official statehood arrived on November 2, 1889.
Which brings us to that marvelous piece of political theater.
Right. South Dakota and North Dakota entered the Union simultaneously, becoming the 39th and 40th states.
And to prevent anyone from claiming superiority or political precedence, President Benjamin Harrison, a Republican, famously shuffled the 2 statehood papers before signing them.
So he signed both, but the order was unrecorded. No one knows to this day which one was first.
It's a fantastic historical detail, but it really symbolizes something deeper than just a political game. It represents a state born out of a strategic political decision, a rushed, pragmatic move that cemented its dual identity right from day one.
That political and historical division is so deeply rooted in the physical reality of the land. Now that we understand the foundations, let's dive into the geographical facts that maintain this deep East River-West River split.
We really can't overstate the Missouri River's role here. It's the spine of the state, but it effectively bisects South Dakota into 2 geographically and socially distinct halves.
And this leads to something of an identity crisis. The U.S. Census Bureau considers South Dakota part of the Midwest based on the East River's identity.
But when you cross the Missouri, West River culture, the economy, the landscape, it all aligns far more closely with the West.
Yeah, with ranching, resource extraction, and those rugged, arid plains.
And we're talking about a massive land area, the 17th largest state in the country.
Yet, it ranks as the 5th least populous and the 5th least densely populated. Vocation, not population, really dictates the politics and the culture here.
That's a great way to put it. The state is vast and sparsely populated. For a tangible sense of that, the center of this sparse population is an unincorporated community, Gan Valley.
Which is the county seat of Buffalo County. That just confirms that even the political centers lean heavily into the remote reality of the Great Plains.
Absolutely. So let's look at why these 2 halves are so fundamentally different, starting with the area east of the river.
East River, South Dakota is defined by the legacy of glaciation. It's generally characterized by higher precipitation and lower, more rolling topography than the West.
And that shaping force was quite recent, geologically speaking. The landscape here is covered by the youngest rock layers and sediments in the state.
Right, deposited during successive periods of glaciation in the Pleistocene epoch.
Which lasted until about 12,000 years ago. When those massive ice sheets retreated, they scraped and dropped what geologists call a rich, fertile mix of rock and soil.
So the glaciers weren't just destructive, they were also highly beneficial, creating this agricultural heartland.
Exactly. And within this East River area, we find these distinct geographical provinces. First, you have the Coteau de Prairie, which is a high, elevated plateau that escaped the latest glaciation.
Creating excellent drainage.
Right. Then there's the dissected Till Plains, which has those rolling hills and that incredibly fertile soil, making it prime for crop production.
And finally, the James River Valley, which is a low, flat stretch.
Yeah, and it's highly eroded and often marshy. The James River flows really sluggishly south. So East River is this mosaic of fertile, glacially modified landscapes, perfect for the major crops we'll discuss later, corn and soybeans.
Now cross the Missouri and you encounter what feels like a physical wall that separates the state. West of the river, we are firmly on the Great Plains.
The landscape shifts immediately. It is noticeably more arid, more rugged, and defined by erosion. You find vast rolling hills, sweeping plains, deep ravines, and the iconic buttes.
Those steep, flat-topped hills that just characterize the American West.
And the sources single out the Badlands as a prime example of this environment. What makes the Badlands so geologically spectacular?
Well, the Badlands are spectacular because they are a visible record of deep time. They are, of course, formed by intense erosion of clay and sand layers.
But those layers contain marine skeletons from an ancient shallow sea that covered the entire region millions of years ago.
And it's mixed with volcanic ash carried by wind from western eruptions.
So a visitor is essentially walking through a record of ancient oceans and distant volcanoes, all exposed by modern weather. It's a harsh environment, difficult for large-scale agriculture.
Which explains why the West River economy is historically centered on ranching rather than cropping.
Exactly. But standing apart from the rugged Badlands are the Black Hills, a massive island-like mountain range in the southwest corner.
They may be low mountains, but their significance historically, culturally, and geographically is immense.
Culturally, they are sacred lands to the Sioux. Geographically, they represent a continental high point. Black Elk Peak, which was long known as Harney Peak,
Stands at 7,242 feet. This makes it the highest point in the United States east of the Rocky Mountains.
that is an enormous geographic marker that few people associate with South Dakota.
And how old is the geological structure of the Black Hills compared to the rest of the state?
Oh, they're ancient. While the East River is covered in young glacial till, the central core of the Black Hills is formed of 2-billion-year-old Precambrian formations.
The absolute oldest, deepest rocks in the entire state.
That's a staggering age difference.
Hmm.
And the outer ring is composed of Paleozoic formations, primarily limestone.
Which were deposited when the area was the shoreline of that ancient inland sea.
Essentially, the Black Hills are a huge geological dome where the oldest rocks were pushed up, and the younger, though still ancient, layers were deposited around the edges.
This clash of landscapes, glaciated plains, arid plains, and mountains, it just guarantees a volatile climate.
It does. South Dakota experiences a temperate continental climate, but the operative word here is definitely extremes.
The temperature swings are extraordinary because there are no large bodies of water to moderate them.
Exactly. Winters are famously cold and dry, with January lows averaging close to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Summers, conversely, are warm and semi-humid, with average highs around 90.
But the record book is shocking. We've gone from a high of 120 degrees Fahrenheit at Usta to a low of -58 at McIntosh.
A 178-degree Fahrenheit swing. That's not just weather, that's environmental hostility.
It demands resilience from everything living there, and those extremes bring constant hazard.
Eastern South Dakota sits firmly in Tornado Alley. It averages about 30 tornadoes every year.
And conversely, in the winter, the state is battered by severe blizzards and ice storms.
So let's talk about life in this challenging environment. The dominant biome is temperate grassland.
Right. Outside of the Black Hills, you have this vast landscape of grasses and crops, with deciduous trees, cottonwood, elm clinging to the river valleys.
And it's the classic Great Plains fauna. Herds of bison, white-tailed deer, pronghorn, prairie dogs, and coyotes.
And the state bird, the ring-necked pheasant. That's an introduced species, isn't it?
Yes, it was introduced from China and has adapted spectacularly. It's become central to the state's culture and economy, especially in the East River area.
And inside the Missouri River itself, you find a truly ancient species.
The prehistoric paddlefish, a living relic swimming right through the heart of the state.
Now contrast that life with the Black Hills.
The Black Hills are an ecological island. Their higher elevation and heavier precipitation support dense pine forests, ponderosa, lodgepole, and spruce.
And the wildlife shifts to large mammals like elk, bighorn sheep, and the elusive mountain lion.
The shift in elevation completely changes the entire ecosystem.
And this geographical split between East River and West River directly informs the state's demographics and its most striking socioeconomic paradoxes.
It is a place of deep cultural roots and deep inequality.
So let's establish the baseline. South Dakota is small by population, estimated at about 924,669 in 2024. That puts it 46th in the U.S.
And the density is tiny, only 11.5 people per square mile.
Yet, within those sparse numbers, there's a remarkable public health statistic that stands out immediately. South Dakota boasts the lowest drug overdose death rate in the U.S. In 2022, it was 11.3 per 100,000.
That is a critical data point. Despite the isolation and the economic hardships faced in certain regions, which often correlate with higher rates of substance abuse, South Dakota maintains a significantly lower rate than the national average.
It speaks to either strong community support or lower prescription rates or some other protective factors.
Now let's look at the cultural composition. The overall racial breakdown shows the majority is white at 84.2%, but the American Indian and Alaskan Native population is substantial at 8.5%.
And that 8.5% is misleadingly uniform. When you look at ancestry, the East River's heritage is stark.
It is. 40.7% German ancestry and 15.3% Norwegian. These German Americans dominate the cultural and political landscape east of the Missouri.
But the closer you get to the Black Hills, the demographics just flip, confirming the duality.
Absolutely. The Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota Sioux are predominant in several West River counties, where they can make up 20% of the entire West River population.
Nationally, South Dakota has the third highest proportion of Native Americans, behind only Alaska and New Mexico.
It's a profoundly important cultural center for the Sioux Nation. And we also find a very specific and unique cultural pocket in South Dakota, the Hutterites,
Right, South Dakota actually has the nation's largest population of Hutterites.
a communal Anabaptist group. They emigrated in 1874 from German-speaking parts of the Russian Empire and maintained these self-sufficient communal farm colonies.
So a deeply private, distinct cultural group that contributes uniquely to the state's German heritage, but stands apart because of their communal lifestyle.
We have to move now into the core of the socioeconomic paradox. 5 counties in South Dakota exist wholly within the boundaries of sovereign Indian reservations.
And the economic situation on these lands is one of systemic, profound poverty.
The isolation and the marginal quality of the land allocated to the reservations after the breakup of the Great Sioux Reservation. It created a perfect storm for economic hardship.
The sources illustrate this with devastating clarity. Can you give us a sense of the scale of the struggle?
Well, consider Ziba County, home to part of the Cheyenne River Reservation. In 2009, it was officially the poorest county in the entire nation.
The poorest county in the U.S.
And the unemployment rate in specific communities, like Fort Thompson on the Crow Creek Reservation, can soar up to 70%.
70%. That's higher than what many nations experienced during their worst economic depressions. It speaks to a severe lack of viable economic infrastructure.
And the hardship extends to basic necessities. According to documentation, 21% of households lack basic plumbing or functional kitchen appliances.
And what about connectivity?
Well, a 1995 study showed that 58% of homes on the Kind Ridge Indian Reservation didn't even have a telephone. While technology has obviously changed, the challenge of connectivity and infrastructure remains immense.
And this structural hardship affects their ability to leverage potential economic drivers, like gaming.
Precisely. Unlike tribes in states closer to major metropolitan areas, South Dakota's tribes are highly isolated. This makes it really difficult to generate significant revenue from casinos.
They just don't have the population centers nearby to draw from.
Right. The profound economic disparity between the reservations and the booming urban centers like Sioux Falls is the single greatest social challenge facing the state.
How does this dual demographic reality manifest in the state's approach to language?
Historically, a 1995 law established English as the common language of the state.
Okay.
However, recognizing the deep cultural importance of the indigenous population, the state made a critical legal shift in 2019.
And what was that change?
Since 2019, the language of the Great Sioux Nation, the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota dialects, has been recognized as the state's official indigenous language.
Which is a profound affirmation of cultural survival and identity, giving the indigenous languages a unique legal status.
It is. The sheer proportion of people speaking an indigenous language actually surpasses the number of Spanish speakers in the state.
Which highlights the strength and continuity of the Native American population.
Now, South Dakota encapsulates the classic Great Plains demographic struggle, the battle against rural flight.
Right. Mechanization and consolidation of agriculture mean fewer people are needed to farm huge tracts of land.
And the result is a massive decline in rural populations. 30 counties experienced population loss between 1990 and 2000 alone.
And this has a direct impact on the demographic profile of those remaining counties.
You see rising median ages. In 24 counties, over 20% of the population is age 65 or older. The young people have to move to find employment.
But this flight isn't universal. We see areas of explosive growth that almost cancel out the rural losses.
Growth is heavily concentrated in the Sioux Falls area. Lincoln County became one of the fastest growing counties nationally in 2010.
The Black Hills area around Rapid City also sees significant development. And interestingly, many Indian reservations are also seeing population increases.
Why the growth on the reservations?
As the reservations assert greater sovereignty and cultural identity, many Sioux are returning from urban areas, reversing previous migration trends. It's a movement seeking to rebuild and strengthen the sovereign nations.
And now for the absolutely brilliant, surprising detail that defines South Dakota's unique approach to legal identity.
The RV residency loophole.
This is a perfect example of the state leveraging its low-tax and low-density environment for economic gain. The mechanism is simple, but revolutionary.
A one-night stay in South Dakota is the minimum required to legally establish residency.
A single night, For full-time travelers, people who live in RVs, or even those who live internationally but need a stable U.S. address, South Dakota offers unbeatable advantages.
No personal income tax and no state inheritance tax.
So someone can drive in, stay one night, get a mailbox, register their vehicles, and immediately claim the legal and financial benefits of South Dakota residency without any long-term physical commitment to the place.
It effectively turns the state's low density and favorable tax climate into a high-value service for highly mobile individuals.
It's a mechanism for establishing legal identity with minimal commitment to the physical place. A very modern and surprising economic engine for a Great Plains state.
The economic story of South Dakota is the greatest paradox of all. It's a state known for cattle and corn, yet its most powerful economic engine today is global high finance.
Yeah, a massive hidden tax haven.
Traditionally, the economic output of the state has been modest. In 2010, the gross state product was $39.8 billion.
Which made it the fifth smallest state output. Per capita income is also squarely in the middle, around 25th nationally.
But those overall numbers mask incredible efficiency and strategic governance. In 2010, for instance, CNBC ranked South Dakota the seventh best state in the nation for business.
And unemployment rates are consistently low, often running below the national average. The state runs lean and is extremely business-friendly.
Thanks in large part to the low-tax environment. But the real story isn't the efficiency of traditional industry. It's the strategic capture of the financial services sector.
The largest contributor to the modern South Dakota economy is the service industry, healthcare, retail, and above all, finance. But how did Sioux Falls, a city on the plains, become a global financial hub?
It all traces back to one brilliant strategic legislative maneuver in 1981.
The Citibank move. At the time, New York had strict caps on the interest rates banks could charge credit card holders, usury laws.
And New York banks were starting to feel pinched by inflation and competition.
Precisely. In 1981, South Dakota became the first state in the nation to completely eliminate those caps on interest rates.
This legislative act was revolutionary. It created a legal environment where credit card issuers could charge whatever interest they wanted nationwide.
So Citibank, seeking to escape New York's restrictive laws, immediately moved its credit card operations to Sioux Falls. And this wasn't just a move of a few desks.
No, this was the relocation of a massive, critical business function.
And many other financial companies followed suit, transforming Sioux Falls into a major data processing and financial services hub almost overnight.
But the financial capture didn't stop there. It extended into the shadowy world of trust funds.
Right. South Dakota has some of the most favorable trust laws in the United States, allowing wealthy individuals, foreign and domestic, to create perpetual trusts.
These trusts can manage assets indefinitely, often shielding hundreds of billions of dollars from future taxation, creditors, and legal claims.
So while parts of West River struggle with poverty, East River Sioux Falls manages hundreds of billions of dollars of global wealth, largely because of the state's decision to dismantle banking regulations decades ago.
It is the ultimate paradox. The state is simultaneously host to some of the nation's deepest economic hardship and a secretive, powerful nexus of international wealth management.
And this sector provides high-paying jobs in the East, which just solidifies the economic disparity across the river.
Despite the high-tech finance industry, we can't ignore the historical and cultural heart of South Dakota, agriculture.
Agriculture is still vital. It defines the rural landscape and culture. But here, too, the West River division holds true.
East River, with its photoglacial till, is the crop, heartland corn, soybeans, and wheat.
While West River is the land of ranching, it's dominated by vast cattle and hog operations.
And what about energy?
The state is a major player in agricultural processing. It ranks as the sixth leading ethanol-producing state, utilizing its vast corn output.
And beyond agribusiness, the government sector itself is critical. Government spending accounts for over 10% of the gross state product.
And the military plays a key role, particularly in the West River economy. Ellsworth Air Force Base, near Rapid City, is the state's second largest single employer.
Defense spending provides essential stability to the West River economy, which lacks the dense financial presence of Sioux Falls.
Moving to another crucial sector, tourism has grown into a major economic pillar, providing roughly 33,000 jobs and generating billions annually.
And the gravitational pull is undoubtedly the Black Hills.
The monumental draws are world famous. You have Mount Rushmore, of course, and nearby the ongoing privately funded Crazy Horse Memorial, which is designed to dwarf Rushmore in scale.
And besides the monuments, the area offers incredible natural beauty.
Absolutely. Historic Deadwood, famous for its gold rush history. You also have protected natural areas like Wind Cave National Park.
Which protects both an immense cave system and one of the largest free-roaming bison herds in North America.
And the Badlands National Park. We also have to mention the Minuteman Missile National Historic Site, which preserves a decommissioned nuclear missile silo.
A sobering reminder of the Cold War history played out on the Great Plains.
Another fascinating site is the Mammoth Site near Hot Springs, a vast paleontological dig where a sinkhole trapped and preserved one of the world's largest concentrations of mammoth remains.
But culturally, nothing compares to the annual Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. We need to put the sheer scale of this event into context for you.
Sturgis is staggering. It's a massive 5-day event every August. In 2015, it drew over 739,000 attendees.
Now, consider this. The state's total population at the time was only about 850,000.
So for a week, the population of South Dakota effectively doubles, all concentrated in the West River region.
It creates a massive logistical challenge, and I'm sure a significant economic windfall for the local communities in the Black Hills.
It's a dramatic, highly concentrated cultural phenomenon.
Shifting to governance, the economic strategy is inseparable from the political philosophy. A deep commitment to low taxes. Our data shows that South Dakota had the lowest per capita total state tax rate in the U.S. as of 2005.
They achieve this through a highly restrictive tax structure. The state levies no personal income taxes, no corporate income taxes, and no inheritance taxes.
Which creates an attractive environment for both residents, like the RV travelers, and businesses, like the financial trust sector.
But that means the state must rely heavily on sales tax.
Precisely. The state sales tax rate is 4.2%, a critical funding mechanism. And we saw the vulnerability of that model when the state faced a structural education crisis.
Right. The sales tax was actually increased from 4% to 4.5%, specifically to generate funds to finance an increase in teacher pay.
It starkly illustrates the budgetary tightness imposed by having no income tax.
Politically, South Dakota is overwhelmingly conservative. It has reliably backed the Republican presidential candidate in the last 14 elections.
And maintains supermajorities in the state legislature.
However, the Native American voting bloc, though geographically concentrated, holds immense political power in close races.
How significant is that vote?
Look at the 2002 U.S. Senate election. Democratic Senator Tim Johnson won by a razor-thin margin of only 532 votes.
And when you analyze the results,
It was clear that the high turnout and strong support from voters living on the reservations provided that margin of victory.
so even though the political environment appears monolithic, the concentration and mobilization of Native American voters in West River gives them a critical, decisive role in statewide elections.
It highlights the internal power dynamics of the state.
So to wrap up, let's look at how South Dakota maintains connectivity across its vast empty spaces and how it is defining its cultural future through education and identity.
Connectivity relies heavily on the interstates, which generally track the major historical routes. Interstate 90 provides the crucial east-west link.
And Interstate 29 runs north-south, entirely in the eastern portion of the state.
It is the critical economic corridor. The I-29 corridor, running near Sioux Falls and Brookings, is consistently linked to higher rates of population and economic growth.
The history of rail, however, is one of
A
decline.
massive decline. In the late 19th century, over 4,400 miles of track were laid. But today, only 1,839 active miles remain, predominantly freight lines.
And this decline leads to a striking infrastructural fact. South Dakota is one of only 2 contiguous states that lack Amtrak service.
And it's unique in one regard. According to records, it is the only contiguous state that has never had Amtrak service.
That just underscores its isolated position cut off from the national passenger rail network.
But for those who embrace the road, the state offers incredibly scenic routes, like the Peter Norbeck National Scenic Byway in the Black Hills.
And the Native American Scenic Byway, which runs along the Missouri River and showcases the tribal lands.
Now, on education, South Dakota seems committed to local access. It boasts the highest number of schools per capita in the United States.
But that commitment to local access comes at a staggering financial cost for the educators themselves. In 2008, the average public school teacher salary was $36,674.
The lowest in the entire nation.
That is a structural problem that must lead to retention crises and brain drain.
It does. That is precisely why the state was forced to increase the sales tax rate, to generate dedicated revenue to raise teacher pay.
It was a direct political acknowledgement of a failing compensation structure.
Despite the financial struggles, There has been a powerful mandate for cultural awareness in education.
Right. In 2007, legislation was passed requiring that all public schools, from preschool through college, mandate education about Native American tribal history, culture, and heritage.
Which is a crucial step for cultural understanding, ensuring every resident learns about the Sioux history and legacy that defines West River.
And where do students go for higher education?
The largest public university is South Dakota State University in Brookings. The oldest is the University of South Dakota in Vermilion, which has the state's only law school and medical school.
And as a final note on governance, the state capital, Pierre, is the second smallest state capital in the U.S., with a population of about 14,000.
The culture of South Dakota is a reflection of its foundational roots, a mix of Indian, rural, Western, and European influences.
You see this in community celebrations like Check Days in Tabor, alongside the annual powwows held on the reservations.
And two literary figures stand out, perfectly capturing the state's duality. First, representing the frontier and immigrant experience, is Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Her semi-autobiographical novels, especially The Long Winter, are foundational texts about growing up on a homestead near De Smet.
And representing the deep indigenous cultural voice, we have Black Elk.
He was a medicine man of the Oglala Lakota. His life story, published as Black Elk Speaks, is recognized globally as a foundational text for understanding the 19th century Indian Wars and Lakota spiritual practice.
Together, those two voices illustrate the contrasting human experiences that define South Dakota's past.
The state has also produced a surprising number of recognizable media personalities, like Tom Brokaw, Bob Barker, and Mary Hart.
Due to its low population, South Dakota doesn't host major league teams, but it has a robust minor and independent league sports scene.
And historically, the state was late to join the highest tier of college athletics.
It was. South Dakota was one of the only states that, for decades, did not have an NCAA Division I team.
That finally changed when South Dakota State made the shift in 2007, followed by the University of South Dakota in 2011.
A huge cultural step for the state. But it has produced phenomenal athletes, especially those tied to the indigenous culture. We have to highlight Billy Mills.
Billy Mills, a Lakota from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, accomplished one of the greatest upsets in Olympic history.
He won the gold medal in the 10,000-meter event at the 1964 Summer Olympics. To this day, he is the only American male to ever win that event.
And finally, let's appreciate the economic and cultural impact of outdoor recreation.
It is massive. Fishing contributes over $224 million, and hunting contributes over $303 million annually.
The state bird, the pheasant, is the most popular target, bringing hunters from all over the country.
And for recreational fitness enthusiasts, there's the incredible George S. Mickelson Trail,
A 109-mile rail trail running through the Black Hills. It's used for cycling, hiking, and marathons.
and its elevation is key. The entire course runs at an elevation of over 4,000 feet, providing a unique challenge and showcasing the beauty of the sacred mountains.
So, this deep dive into South Dakota reveals that the state is truly a land of magnificent and often painful contrasts.
The entire narrative is built on that East River-West River duality, which separates glaciated farmland from arid ranching plains and German-Norwegian heritage from the Sioux Nation.
We've seen the extraordinary historical depth of the Black Hills conflict, where the Lakota still refuse compensation for illegal seizure, demanding the land's return.
And we learned about the striking contemporary paradox,
Mm-hmm.
systemic, crippling poverty on sovereign reservations existing right alongside a massive, hidden global finance and trust fund industry in Sioux Falls.
And we discovered that the very identity of the state, its low population and no income tax policy, has been weaponized, not just to attract business,
But to attract residents who maintain only the most minimal physical commitment to the place.
So, as we conclude this deep dive, consider this. South Dakota's strategy relies on its low population density and its unique ability to allow full-time travelers, people whose identity is defined by mobility, to establish legal residency with a single overnight stay.
Given the immense economic challenges of maintaining rural life versus the centralized growth in places like Sioux Falls, how does the ability to claim a physical place with virtually no physical commitment reflect broader modern shifts in identity, mobility, and community?
It leaves us with a provocative question about the future of place itself in the American heartland.
What is the real definition of citizenship and commitment in the Mount Rushmore state today?
That's certainly something to ponder long after this deep dive is done. Thank you for joining us.
Be well and keep learning.